Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a massive leap back in time to discover ancient solutions to a very modern and honestly a very existential crisis. We often look at environmental collapse and climate challenges as entirely new phenomena, things that require brand new, ultra-modern technological fixes. But history shows us that early civilizations faced these exact same threats. They looked out at advancing sands and barren earth, and they developed some incredibly sophisticated blueprints to survive and thrive. So let's explore exactly how they did it. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The threat of desertification to Earth, a modern global crisis. Right now, a whopping 30% of the Earth's surface is threatened by desertification. And this isn't just about losing beautiful green landscapes, right? It is fundamentally about human survival. It's about the displacement of massive populations. Just to put that into perspective, back in 1988 alone, this ecological shift created 10 million environmental refugees. 10 million people who literally had to pack up and flee because the earth beneath their feet could no longer sustain life. And the economic toll? It's just as severe. We're talking about a $42 billion annual economic loss globally. Every single year, the world loses 10 million hectares of productive land. Actually, think about this. Even a country like Egypt, which is historically legendary for its mastery of water management, loses about 1,000 square meters of prime farmland every single hour to desertification. Every hour. Which brings us to our core question. How did ancient civilizations combat this? Long before modern technology, industrialized agriculture, or global climate summits, history had to deal with these exact same existential threats. Without satellites or synthetic chemicals, how did they manage to sustain immense populations in incredibly harsh environments? Well, let's look at one example. Section 2. Sustainable Agriculture in Ancient Egypt. Practical Engineering and Environmental Respect. The ancient Egyptians actively managed the Nile's floods to build a thriving, totally sustainable agricultural economy. It's kind of like a giant puzzle they had to solve. Instead of exhausting their land, they used strict crop rotation for soil health. They relied entirely on natural fertilizers, making absolutely sure their soil and water weren't polluted with harsh additives. Plus, they engineered advanced irrigation systems, utilizing complex canals and a really clever counterweight mechanism called a shadoof to move water efficiently without wasting a drop. They even harnessed early renewable energy. They used the intense solar heat of the region to naturally dry crops and prep the soil before planting. It was just a perfect harmony of engineering and natural cycles. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is we see a completely different but equally powerful approach found in academic research on Islamic jurisprudence regarding land reclamation. We're shifting gears now from the physical engineering of the Egyptians to the highly structured legal and spiritual frameworks that were designed to combat barren lands. Section 3. The concept of reviving dead land. Spiritual and legal incentives. The core concept here is reviving dead land, or ihya al-mawat. This refers to land that has absolutely no owner and no life. Legally, under this framework, this land becomes owned by the individual who actively cultivates it. And why this matters so much is that it was an incredibly ingenious legal incentive. It combated desertification by directly rewarding backbreaking work with permanent property rights. Basically, if you put in the sweat equity to make the desert bloom, boom, the land was yours. But the brilliance of this system went way deeper than just property acquisition. A central Qur'anic verse links human creation directly to Earth's cultivation. This spiritual dimension framed cultivating the Earth as a direct divine mandate. It made planting a seed an ongoing charity. If a bird, a wild animal, or a human ate from that cultivation, it was recorded as a profound charitable act for the person who originally planted it. It literally tied the physical health of the environment to the spiritual success of the individual. Section 4. Laws and Conditions of Reclamation Ownership. Establishing modern legal frameworks. Now, historical Islamic scholars had differing legal views on how exactly this worked, specifically on whether a citizen needed the state's permission to reclaim land. As you can see in the table, the Hanafi school argued the ruler's permission was absolutely required to maintain order and control. The Shafi and Hanbali schools argued the exact opposite. No permission was needed at all. They wanted to cut through the red tape and encourage rapid cultivation. And then the Maliki school took a more nuanced middle ground, stating it depended on distance. If you're near the city, you need permission. Far away in the deep desert, you don't. It's a remarkably sophisticated debate on property acquisition that honestly really mirrors our modern zoning and land use discussions. So the crucial point is how they enforce this to ensure people weren't just claiming land and sitting on it. Enter the 3-year rule, established by Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab. If you claimed a piece of dead land, you had exactly 3 years to cultivate it. If you failed to show progress, well, your ownership was revoked entirely and given to someone else. It's a strict use-it-or-lose-it timeline. This ensured land wasn't just hoarded for speculation, but actively and urgently saved from desertification. Section 5. Public resources forbidden from monopolies. Early public utility laws. Now think about how this relates to our modern debates about corporate monopolies. This ancient framework recognized that some things are just way too important for private ownership, which completely mirrors modern debates about the privatization of nature. Islamic law explicitly forbade anyone from monopolizing 3 essential utilities. First, water, meaning rain, springs, and rivers. Second, pasture, the wild grass for livestock. And third, fire, meaning wood and fuel. Survival in these harsh environments absolutely required shared access. You could own your farm for sure, but you could never cut off the broader community's access to the basic elements of survival. Let's move to and see how this builds. Section 6. Historical lessons for a sustainable future. Timeless wisdom for modern crises. Let's bring this full circle back to that $42 billion crisis we talked about at the start. To bridge these ancient solutions back to our modern crisis, we can look to the mindset required to win this fight. There's a powerful quote attributed to Prophet Muhammad that states, "If the resurrection were established upon one of you while he has in his hand a sapling, then let him plant it." It is the ultimate symbol of relentless environmental stewardship. Even at the literal end of the world, when all hope seems entirely lost, the mandate is clear. You plant the tree. You do the work, regardless of the odds. Which leaves us with a final provocative question to think about. Are we ready to apply these ancient blueprints to revive the dead lands of our modern world? We are losing millions of hectares a year, but perhaps the solutions don't just lie in new technology. Perhaps they lie in the profound legal, spiritual, and agricultural incentives our ancestors used to push back the sand. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this look into the past leaves you inspired to shape a more sustainable future. Catch you next time.